Hey, good morning. Just got home from work and I had saw this article talking about the Marshall Plan. So this is something a bit new that they're looking to do for single mothers. And of course, I'll leave the description for the information below. And it calls for says we need a Marshall Plan for moms, a plan to pay our mothers for their for their unpaid labor. And this is primarily related, like I did a video a while back showing how during the economic fallout, typically many of the pseudo welfare jobs that are created for women that are typically government jobs were basically wiped out, right? For every 10 women that lost their jobs in the public sector, only one man lost his job, basically showing how non-essential most of those jobs basically were. And of course, this is primarily pulled from taxes, primarily from men in the country. And it's basically to give many of these single women and single moms some sort of a work. Now, of course, as a result of this, these individuals are more likely to vote for the individuals who are basically for this basically form of this social program, which is just basically a form of universal basic income for many of these mothers. And so the plan is to actually give $2,400. So should mothers get a monthly $2,400 check? The Marshall Plan for moms is making waves. And this is recent. This is an article as of February 4th, 2021. And it's important to understand if you've understood that, and then you probably heard about a lot of the tax credits that are coming for those who have children, primarily for individuals who are single mothers. There's larger tax credits that are being talked about by Mitt Romney. And the reason for this is because one, 50% of the country is women. So women predominantly hold all of the voting rights, right? So even if all men voted and all women voted, no matter what the bill was, women would always win because women hold the majority of the vote. And so this is why you see politicians now pandering to women, because they make up the vast majority of voters. And so they basically just give them, it's just basically um, welfare, a form of welfare. Now, of course, the purpose of this is obviously, I talked about last time, just like, what was it, Charlie Munger, who is a famous investor, and he basically made the wise saying, you show me the you show me the incentive, and I will show you the outcome. So obviously, if the incentive is paying women who are single mothers for their unpaid labor, and of course, if you actually calculate it, it's almost 30 grand. It's 29,000 a year that they're given. Who do you think is going to pay for this? It's typically going to come off the backs of taxpayers, come off the backs of primarily men. And so instead of women going out and finding men to have a family with, in essence, the government becomes the man of the house. And of course, the government basically robs all men. Whether you're a single man or a married man, you basically get robbed by the government to fund single motherhood. And America has the largest pool out of all the countries in the world. America has the largest pool of single mothers. That's a fact. And of course, their desire is to increase this so that their children, of course, will lean more towards, their children will lean more towards being socialists. And this is what the country is. Primarily, America has already fallen to socialism. It's been this way for quite some time. And then, of course, we're now seeing the introduction of more communist thinking that will eventually take a much firmer root within society. That's why you see a much more authoritarian way of doing things within many of these states, right? Many of these states, even though the science didn't support many of the lockdowns, and even though the World Health Organization had stated multiple times that lockdowns should not be the first thing that is utilized, you saw that in many of these democratic states, like here in New York, California, Washington, etc., Chicago, where you saw these numerous lockdowns, a more authoritarian way of doing things, which is much more indicative of a government that is going and leading towards a route of communism, primarily because Americans are socialist by and large. And so my advice, which is the advice that I'm taking on, is unfortunately if you're a single man and if you have the ability to be and the desire to be an entrepreneur, America unfortunately is not the route and the way to go. Especially if you're a man of color, if you're a minority like myself, America doesn't favor a lot of those minority owned businesses. Overwhelmingly, most of the businesses that were shut down here in New York were typically minority owned, especially here, especially many of the black owned businesses were largely impacted. More so than many of the other big businesses. And most of those big businesses are typically owned by white Americans. And of course, they work with the government. And so they have the backing of the government, right? I mean, you don't see many black owned businesses that have the backing of the American government, right? I mean, well, who was the politician? Who was the what was it? The guy from the Goya, right? The Goya, they were trying to cancel. They were trying to cancel Goya, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. I thought we liked minorities, but not minorities who don't support the narrative. And so, if you're a hardworking man and you're looking to start a business, America might not be for you, especially because of the route that it's going. I kind of have the feeling that we're going to see much more poverty going forward. The reason being is because there are going to be no jobs. So America has to find a way to continue its consumption because America is a consumer economy where they basically print money and then they buy stuff from China. China then turns around and then buys stuff and buys hard assets. And unfortunately, this is the long route that we've going. Even under Trump, it was the exact same thing. Even though a lot of people, of course, it was all America first, but not really. Not at least to the extent that it should have gone. It was a sprinkle of America first, but not overwhelmingly America first. You can just see that by the trade deficit. The trade deficit under Trump got worse. It didn't get better, even though he promised that the trade deficit was going to get better. It never did. And he printed more money than Obama did and than most presidents who came before him because of what had happened. And even though he had the opportunity to red pill a lot of Americans and expose what was going on within the hospitals via the CARE Act and how hospitals were making more money as a result of the CARE Act, he could have exposed what I had shown numerous times, the fraudulent swabs that had been being used, the CDC, even the article I had showed, where even the CDC admitted that the swabs that they had sent out were broken and were more likely to cause false positives. But none of this was done, even to the very end where Trump invited many people to that rally, right? That took place where the insurrection took place. And during his trial for his second attempt at impeachment, they acknowledged that they knew that there was something going on. And I kind of had a feeling that it was going to be a snare for many of these right-wing individuals who were supporting him. And unfortunately, that's exactly what it was. And I kind of have a feeling that he set all these people up. He basically set the stage for what was going to take place. Because if he knew that something was going to go on, then why would he invite all of his people, basically leading them to the slaughter? Not only that, leading them to the Capitol, which made no sense. And nothing new was stated. People went there thinking he was going to drop some receipts, that some new information was going to come out. But it was the same old, same old. So what was the point? The point was to set up the right, in my opinion. But this is just political theater. But if you're a single man, if you're a man who doesn't have kids, it might be a good opportunity to start thinking it might be time to leave America, especially if you're interested in having a family. America is not the place for a strong man to have a family. It's just not. You're more than likely, divorce rate's over 50%, you're more than likely to have your family ripped away from you from the government who is competing for your family. They're competing for the women nowadays and for their attention, and they do so with money, openly. There's absolutely nothing that you can do about it. And so whether or not your goal is to do that, with what's coming down the pipe, especially moving forward, nothing good is going to be waiting for masculine men. America has no interest in masculine men. Other countries might, who don't have the ability to print money like America currently has. And once that ability is gone, you best believe that many of these individuals that rely heavily on the government, and over 70% of all government spending goes to social programs. And for many of these individuals who typically rely on the government, a great devastation is waiting for you. And so as a man, you might want to think maybe now is the opportunity where I can pick up a skill, especially if you're a man of color. Maybe there's some sort of program with the narrative that you can take, that you can benefit from. Maybe there's a trade, plumbing, electrical. I posted another video talking about the need for trades, for skilled tradesmen, and you can take that skill from country to country. If you're a skilled electrician, if you're a plumber, if you are a carpenter, you can take that skill from country to country, start your own business. What's the point of staying here where you're more than likely to get involved with the wrong individual, maybe have an accusation made against you? Look at Cuomo. Whether or not you believe what is going on, whether or not you believe he is guilty or not, look how easy it is for someone to get canceled. How easy it is for a man to just like that overnight, who is in a position of authority, now quickly basically come under fire with no proof, just allegations. Something to think about.